Welcome to Colonie TV, the governmental educational channel for the town of Colonie.
Welcome to Real Conversations with Lisa and Susan. I'm Susan.
And I'm Lisa. Welcome.
Today we're going to be talking about tips for frugal living. The new normal is kind of what we're calling it. And, we're coming out of a recession. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about where we are and where we have been financially, economically. I myself have gone through, in the last couple of years, an extended bout of being unemployed. Over 50 and unemployed, not a good place to be in this economy. And in the show, we always look at, okay, when something bad happens, what value can we get out of it, to move us forward? And my hope is that people will look back on the last couple of years and remember what they learned about, staying watchful on their expenditures, so
and
that
not overreaching,
so that when bad times hit again financially for families, and they probably will. I mean, it is cyclical; it does happen. That we're better prepared for that. So. I know when you hear the word frugal, when some people hear the word frugal, they hear, it's kind of, cheap and sacrifice. And
we had actual different reactions to the word frugal. And so we wanted to just kind of talk about that.
Kind of level set.
Yeah, like what do we mean by it? Because, what we're really talking about, what we want to talk about on the show is being empowered and being able to make choices for yourself from a place of empowerment, not sacrifice and,
And sometimes it's sacrifice, but, I guess I come from the old school where sometimes sacrifice is good for you and instant gratification is, as we now know, not always good. And I really see it a lot of the same way as overeating, overspending and overeating. I kind of see them the same way. There's a certain amount of discipline that is actually, good for you and beneficial for you.
But that discipline's another word that often leaves people with, like, I don't want discipline. I want the freedom and all that. But the thing that's interesting.
But it got us here. It got us into an economic crisis.
But what I want to say about the freedom is that true freedom comes from having that base, that wealth, that, not from being overextended. When you're overextended and you can't pay your bills, there's no freedom. You can't choose a different job. You can't choose anything. You're really struggling. And I think that's the hope of today's show is that we're going to show you some ways. We have an expert here who's going to talk with us, and we're going to show some ways to
empower yourself.
Right, empower yourself to be frugal. So we're going to take a short break right now. We're going to come right back and talk with our guest. Welcome back to Real Conversations with Lisa and Susan. And as we said, our topic in today's show is living frugally, the new normal. And we're very excited to have a terrific guest. Her name is Susan Schell, and she's a certified financial planner practitioner, and she's a partner in a firm called Generations Planning Group. And in addition to that, she is the founder of the financiallysavvygraduate.com. Actually, I don't think the is in there. It's financiallysavvygraduate.com. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So welcome, Sue. Welcome to Real Conversation.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, we're so happy to have
Again,
you.
because you were a guest before, right?
A long
Yeah.
time ago.
few
Oh,
years ago.
yeah.
Before the Great Recession.
Yeah.
That's
It's
right.
sort of in the midst or when it was just getting underway.
Yeah, just starting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, welcome back. And today, if you wouldn't mind just starting us off by telling people a little bit about yourself and, how you've come to sort of know about this topic.
Okay. I've been a financial advisor for, I guess, about 15 years now.
Started when she was
And-
9.
Yeah, long time ago. And as I proceeded along with that and have had many, many conversations, of course, with lots of different people, started to truly have the sense that I was hearing very often, we didn't learn about finances when we were in school.
If you go to the grocery store, which I do, what do they have? They have the carts with the little thing for the toddler, the seat for the toddler. So children are learning as from the time they're toddlers how to spend money. They get a bird's eye view of that cash register and that whole cash or now credit transaction. We learn really early how to spend our money, right?
Absolutely.
But not how to save it.
But not how to save it and even less about investing it.
So say more about so you were saying you found very common for people not to know about this
Right,
stuff.
not to really have developed a habit of sort of thinking and being deliberate about their finances,
Being mindful.
being mindful.
Yeah.
And so that over the years, I decided that I felt I had a commitment to also be educating. What I felt would be the best thing would be to educate college students, and that led me to my totally separate business, which is providing workshops for college students so that they can kind of enter the real world and set out on the right foot and maybe avoid the pitfalls that probably the three of us and many other people who we know had happened to them because of a lack of education.
And with student debt now exceeding even credit card debt in this country, it's much more important. So you really have hit on a key audience.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention you are an author, and I didn't mention it at the top of the show, but you've written a book on this that you provide at your workshops and that people
Right.
can purchase for that.
Yeah.
So I assume that the things that you're teaching college students are the things we all need to know. They're sort of basic things like
Yeah.
that we need to know to become frugal.
Absolutely.
So before the show, we kind of put our heads together and we came up with some ideas of frugal, because it is about tips for frugal living. So we have like some tips for frugal living. So the first one that I put together, maybe you want to comment on it. The first one that I put onto the pile was eat what you have. So eat
Can
what
I
you-
interrupt just for
Yeah, go
1
ahead.
second?
I'm
I think that's a
sorry.
great one. No, but I want to bring up a point that you put in which is you have to think about why you want to be frugal first.
Yeah.
And so I think we should start
Oh,
there if
that's
you're okay.
that's yeah. No, sure.
So tell us a
Develop
little bit
some
about what we
framework
mean.
here.
All right.
What you mean by that?
Yeah, my thought on that is it's easier to sort of proceed with something or accomplish something if you know why you are doing it.
Absolutely.
And what one person may want is to be frugal, so maybe they have a lot of money at their disposal, but they still want to be frugal because they've chosen to save more for the future. They're looking down the line. They've got some things they want to do, and they want to basically have flexibility to do
Right.
those things. Somebody else might want to be frugal because they really have to, and they've got to make their dollars stretch, and they have no choice. So that's the idea behind that. It's going to be different thing to different people.
What I find so amazing is that there's so much psychology wrapped up with money.
Oh my God, yes. No kidding.
You know?
And that very much is how we were brought up, what our experiences have been over time.
Right.
And then you get to a point and then you sort of think, okay, what do I want to do with that background that I have?
And going back to eat what you have,
Yeah.
and you were comparing being overweight with overspending, and I think that when you sort of tying this all together, when you know why you're doing what you're doing or what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, it helps you to make a decision in the moment when it's tied to a future goal.
Yeah,
I
that's
think.
true.
So just like, oh, I'm not going to eat this donut because I want to fit in that dress for the wedding or the reunion, or because I want to be healthy, or any number of
Right,
reasons.
right.
You know, it's that sort of chews you up. So I think that's a really important
Right.
point. Is the first tip is to figure out, why do you want to be frugal? What is it that you hope to gain? What will saving the money or having that provide for you?
Well, I used to think that, I would not buy that new purse, or not buy that, forego that purchase to save for something like a vacation, but I'm well beyond that at this point, and really my hope is that people will begin to get well beyond that and really think in terms of the bigger picture. Women particularly, and I know that a lot of our audience is women, we're making 20% less than men, generally speaking, and we're living, I don't know what it is now,
8 to 10 years.
8 to 10 years longer. So, we really need to keep that in mind. And we need to, and also in terms of empowerment. It was not that long ago the Supreme Court ruled that where you spend your money is a way that you express yourself. So, financial expenditures, particularly in campaigns, are First Amendment protected because they're a way that you are expressing your support for a candidate.
Right.
So I think of it now as, expressing myself through writing a check to support a cause. And I think of it in terms of having some choices in my life. Like if I'm like for example, last year I was working a lot, and because I had some money, some savings accumulated, I could make the choice to scale back my work.
Yeah.
And that's, that is a big motivation for not going out and, buying that lobster dinner at the fancy restaurant, but instead cooking at home.
Right.
So that's what brings me to eat what
Eat
you
what
have.
Yeah. So what do you think about that as a strategy? Eat what you have.
Eat what you have.
I like that. I mean, I like to go out, but my husband and I don't go out a lot. We sort of plan out how often we're going to do that. And so every week we shop, we have things in the refrigerator that we can kind of turn to make our lunches, and it's a habit. So once you're in the habit of making that lunch, so you don't have to buy it.
Right.
It's so much healthier too.
Knowing what you're going to eat.
And you have to develop, and
what
you're
you
right, I
have.
mean, you have to develop your pantry, so you have to have those items on hand so that you can eat what you have. But I've been kind of taking that on as a creative challenge just to see if I could actually do it. And, I've been coming up with some pretty good stuff. I mean, it's simple food, but as a challenge, as a way to do it, like if I had to, if I had to do it, could I do it? And now I know that I can.
So you're saying looking into the freezer and what have I been accumulating here for the last couple of years, and what could I eat instead of going
to me,
and getting
there's
something
nothing
else?
more satisfying than going into the fridge or the freezer and using something up.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and just knowing that, to me, I mean, there's probably other things more satisfying, but that's one of the things that's very satifying to me. Another one for me is okay, to change to a different strategy. Another strategy, the one that I suggested, was asking family and friends if they have something, or to let them know that you're buying something, because they might already have it and let you have it. Like for example, I wanted to buy a juicer. And so I was all set. I was looking into juicers, and come to find out, my mother had a practically brand new juicer that she wasn't using. And so I was able to get that and use that instead. And the amount of money that I saved was crazy. Plus, it ended up being, I wasn't as much of what I needed as what I thought. But if I had invested in it, it would have just ended up in my basement, someday go into a garage sale. But I think being willing to talk to other people about stuff, because there's an excess out there, and you can maybe barter with somebody, or maybe they'll gift it to you, or maybe get it at a much reduced rate. Or another site that I use, or a site that I use, is called FreeCycle.
Yeah, that's really great.
And FreeCycle takes they want to keep stuff out of the dumps.
Yeah.
And so you put up there what you need, and it's a way to help other people, and it's a way to get help.
I mean, I had thought for years that going green was expensive, but it really is. A lot of the things that are green are actually frugal. as well. I mean, turning down your thermostat, you save some money. And you know, investing, that's another thing we can talk about in a minute, but investing in a thermostat that allows you to control your temperature, you know, that's a way to save money as well. So a lot of green initiatives are actually cost-saving initiatives as well.
You talked in prior to the show about social pressure and that how that plays in. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that makes one of the biggest challenges now because, well, there's two things attached to that. One is that we're seeing people around us with so much, and so many things now are considered sort of you have to have it. 20, 15 years ago even, I don't know, I did 20, 30 years ago maybe, I didn't have a microwave, I didn't have
But do you think, Sue, with the economic recession, that's still the case? Because what I find is that there's almost like I'm starting to see like a cultural shift towards maybe it's even kind of cool to not buy that flashy new whatever.
That could be, and for some people that might be the case, but it's also the case that these days everybody has to have a cell phone. And so then it's going to be a smartphone, and you have to have a computer.
But those
and
aren't
so
considered
then,
flashy, those are considered necessary.
Yeah, and that's part of the issue is
Yeah,
the
that's
things
true.
that are very expensive are also necessary, but some of them you may end up getting the flashier version because there's a lot of hype about it, and it almost becomes the norm.
It depends on where you're at, because I think if you have children, there's a lot of social pressure. You know, if your children are friends with people who have a lot, or you know what I mean, and you want to provide for your children. So I do think that social pressure. And again, you go back to, you know, what does the buying of it now cost you in the future? You know, does it cost you your sanity? Does it cost you your ability to relax and you know have peace of mind? And that's what I think people have to look, not just the financial cost in this moment, but what's the long-term cost.
Well, that brings me to my next tip, which is invest in yourself. So that, you know, some things that you spend money on are really not expenditures, but they're investments. So you have to think, you know, is what I'm going to get back from this more than what I'm putting into it? If it's more, then by all means, go ahead, invest in it. You know,
Investing in your education.
Investing in your education.
Or
Well,
books or conferences, that kind of thing.
That's an investment
where it's going
in
to
yourself.
develop you.
But you're looking for what's the return on that investment. It's not just a
Exactly.
flash in the pan, but it's something that's going to pay off. And I do think that people need to look at expenses and investments differently, because it's important to invest in yourself and to treat yourself well. And I don't mean well like, you know, necessarily a vacation every 5 minutes, but you know, you don't want to walk around in tattered clothing because that might impact your ability to earn money or things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other like tips off the top of your head that you had mentioned, or should I look at my list of about spending to feel better? We kind of touched on that.
Yeah, this and when you mentioned that psychology has such a big part or is so intertwined with financial and our financial lives, but I think there's a fair amount of people who will buy things, go shopping to feel better, feeling down about something, so go out and shop. And one of the other things that we talked about, which is kind of related to it, is how it depends how you spend your time as to how much money you're spending. So you can be choosing to do things that are free or very low cost, or you can be choosing to maybe go to the mall and if you tend to be tempted by that kind of thing, then that you kind of know where that's leading.
Right.
Well, I find I actually spend more money sometimes in the wintertime because I'm not at the parks walking, and I'm not, you know, because I'm not a cold weather outside girl. So, but I'll go to the mall and walk around. Well, then I'll see, you know, that thing, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm just wanting to spend money on it. So it is something to be mindful of all the time, is how are you spending your time?
But being frugal is really a lifestyle that one can choose to adopt, and or maybe not. I mean, you know, whether or not you can afford it. I always use Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett, the wealthiest or third wealthiest man in the world. He's actually frugal.
Very frugal.
He's frugal now. He could live anywhere he wanted, drive anything he wanted, and he lives, a very simple lifestyle, which I happened to really respect him for.
Yeah. And I think there are a lot of wealthy people who partly became wealthy because they were careful of how they were spending, or
They're mindful.
Their priorities again are on things that are not necessarily those things that are costing them a lot of money.
It's really, I think it's a way to respect yourself and respect your time, because for most people, time is money. I mean, we get paid X amount for putting in, X amount of time. And when you, spend your money on things that aren't going to give you more back than what you spent on them, then you're not really respecting yourself.
Yeah.
That is a good way to look at it. Like when you're buying something, thinking, how many hours do I have to work to pay for this thing? And is it worth my life? Is it worth that many hours of my life? I mean, that's a pretty
huge.
powerful connection. And I wanted to touch on something else you had said, because you one of the tips that you had written down was about finding low-cost ways to take care of yourself. And I think that is connected to what you were saying about the psychology, because if you think, oh, I'll go buy this expensive purse or whatever, or car, if you can find another way of nurturing yourself, it's actually probably healthier than just trying to find something to make you feel better.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, such basic things as eating an apple a day. I mean, I know that sounds like overly simplistic perhaps, but it's really good for you, and it'll pay off in the long run. Doesn't cost anything really, pennies, but it's something that's going to give you much greater health in the long run. And being healthy and staying healthy is a way to be frugal, because, think about healthcare costs. I mean, think about if everybody in this country committed to being healthy, being a cheerleader for their own personal health, how much overall we would be able to save in healthcare costs.
Speaking of saving, I definitely want to touch on that, because I know it's part of your program, and I read it in your book. You have a way of helping people to save. Can you talk about that a little bit?
One of the kind of a basic premise for helping people to save is to remind them that they can pay themselves first. That's not a concept that I invented by any means, but it's a good way to describe it. So right off the top, before spending on anything that's discretionary, you're putting some money away for savings. And savings might be, just into your bank account. It might be into your, employer's retirement plan.
Deferred compensation, take care of that if that's available to you.
And you made a really good point, again, in your book and in your workshop, about the difference if you start saving when you're in your 20s and 30s versus if you start saving in your 40s and 50s. Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, it's a basic concept of the more time you have, if you put something away and if it has more time to build, it's going to be less work for you. I mean, I'm just trying to make it very, very simplistic.
Yes.
Right,
but if you wait to
so
start
better to start
putting it away.
today. Don't wait until next year. But literally start putting away $5 a week. And one of the courses that I teach, I help women with, obviously I'm not an expert in this, but with some things. And if you once a week or once a day don't buy that cup of coffee, and you put $3 a day, so it's 21 a week, and you do that for weeks and weeks and weeks, it really builds up very quickly. And and before you know it, you have a savings account that maybe you can go invest in something that's going to give you more interest in that kind of thing.
One other tip, and I know that we're kind of getting close to the end
Almost
here,
out of time.
But one other tip that I'm thinking of as you're speaking is find things that are lower cost that work well for you and stick with them. Like if it's a cup of coffee that's available and you really like it and it costs $1, buy that. instead of the one that costs $3 or $4 that maybe you like as much but not more than the one for $1, choose the lower cost option that works really well for you, because if it doesn't work well for you, it's not about being good to yourself. You're not getting real value out of it.
It's
So
not sustainable.
it's not sustainable, and you're suffering with the dollar coffee. Don't suffer with it, but choose it if that's what you like. Also, like just home products. If you can go into a grocery store now and get like the no name brand. If you find one that really works for you, use
with
that
it. Yeah.
one. If it doesn't work for you, don't use it. But I've found a couple of products that are no name that really work. And even though now I'm not unemployed anymore, I'm using them because they work.
Right, even though you could afford more.
Although I could afford
Right.
more.
Now we have less than 2 minutes left, so if there's one or two things you want to make sure that our viewers know, maybe perhaps from your book or something that you'd like to say to just give our viewers the couple of last minute tips.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to leave with the idea that to be deliberate about if you're aware of what your expenses are to begin with, then it's going to be easier for you to kind of turn around and examine, okay, out of those things that I'm spending, what can I be maybe doing a little bit differently?
So being deliberate, being mindful,
being aware.
and being clear about what you truly want, like what's your end goal.
Yeah.
And I do want to mention that Susan has a really great special report that I know you wrote for graduates, but it's the basic information, and people can get that at financiallysavvygraduate.com. Is that right?
Yes.
So if you're interested in that, it's a free special report. You can go to her website and get that. So anything last for you, or about 10 seconds before we're done?
I think I've said just about everything, probably too much.
Well, this is certainly a great show and a great topic, and we thank you so
It's
much,
an important
Susan.
topic.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much for
Susan.
being our guest, and thank you for watching Real Conversations with Lisa and Susan.